Luigi Mangione has become a captivating figure all across the world after allegedly gunning down the CEO of United Healthcare. This case continues to attract significant public attention that far exceeds the coverage United Healthcare typically provides its patients. Mangione's alleged actions have sparked numerous theories and speculation, leading some people to believe he is a patsy or a fall guy, while others view him as a symbol of class consciousness and rebellion against corporate greed. Today, we will explore the various theories surrounding Luigi Mangione and examine the evidence, symbolism, and potential motivation behind his alleged actions. Luigi has always been a bit of an intellect. He graduated valedictorian of his high school class and was accepted into University of Pennsylvania, which is an Ivy League school. He went on to receive a graduate and undergraduate degree in computer science and engineering. His LinkedIn also shows a history of working in gaming research and development with a background in artificial intelligence. Luigi was also set to inherit a pretty significant inheritance from his grandparents. But the trustees in charge of the grandparents' estate are instructed to deny the inheritance to any family member indicted on a crime or convicted of a felony. This is a super smart guy who has everything to lose by committing a crime, including his wealthy family, a hefty inheritance, and of course, his freedom. With so much information and misinformation going on about this case, one thing people do seem to agree on is that the math ain't mathin'. Is Luigi a violent criminal with a vendetta against the healthcare system? Is he a patsy or fall guy for someone else? Is he a real-life Riddler? Or is he a victim, handpicked by a few very powerful and very wealthy people? And are they using him to distract us from a much larger ring of financial crimes and corruption? December 4th, Brian Thompson, a 50-year-old CEO for United Healthcare, was gunned down in Manhattan, New York, on his way to an investor's meeting at the Hilton Hotel. According to early police reports, the gunman was masked and arrived on foot to the scene of the crime about 5 minutes before the shooting took place. They also allege that the perpetrator stopped by a nearby Starbucks where he conveniently pulled his mask down and revealed his face. They also claim that video evidence shows him purchasing 2 energy bars and a water at the Starbucks beforehand. Many people walked by the gunman while he waited on Thompson to arrive. He was dressed in a dark hooded coat, a gray backpack, and of course, the mask. According to witnesses, the suspect shot Thompson several times in the back and the leg. And even though there were plenty of witnesses around on a busy Wednesday morning in Manhattan, the suspect remained very calm and composed even when his weapon jammed multiple times. In fact, he calmly cleared the jam in the gun, continued to fire while walking towards Brian Thompson. The NYPD chief of directors said that this looked like someone who was very proficient and skilled in the use of a firearm. According to investigators, the suspect fled across the street, hopped on an e-bike, and disappeared into Central Park. The words delay and depose were found on shell casings at the crime scene. Those words seem to directly reference tactics employed by health insurance companies to deny claims. This connection has fueled speculation that whoever the shooter is, their actions were motivated by grievances against the healthcare system specific to insurance companies and United Healthcare. 4 days after the death of Brian Thompson, the New York Police Department released 2 photographs of the person of interest. But people are very conflicted about these images, and the majority of people seem to believe this isn't the same person at all. A day later, on December 9th, and with a 5-day lead on police, Luigi Mangione is arrested in Altoona, Pennsylvania at a local McDonald's. Coincidentally, he was also arrested the same day as Thompson's funeral. According to police, they received a 911 phone call from someone who claimed to have recognized Luigi from the photos that were released the day before. This person claims they recognized Luigi based on what he was wearing in the photos released, specifically his jacket and his backpack, which immediately raised questions with the public because he wasn't wearing the same jacket or the backpack in photos at McDonald's as he was at the crime scene. And during the actual crime, the shooter never uncovers the majority of his face, which would make it very, very difficult to identify him on looks alone. Not to mention, a lot of those facial features just don't add up. According to the police who arrested Luigi Mangione at McDonald's, McDonald's, he had multiple incriminating items on him, including a 3D printed pistol, a 3D printed silencer, multiple fake IDs, a backpack, and a 3-page manifesto. There's been multiple versions of his manifesto circulating, but none of them have been proven to be authentic. They also listed $8,000 cash and $2,000 in foreign currency, and they claim his specific backpack is used to block cellular data transmissions. So assuming he is the shooter, why would he keep the most incriminating evidence on him, like the gun itself and a manifesto? Based on his life's history and according to friends and family, I highly doubt that Luigi is a seasoned criminal. However, he is incredibly smart and intelligent. Why would he keep these things on him for 5 entire days as he fled from police? Not to mention, the whole point in having a 3D printed ghost gun is to be able to ditch it immediately after a crime because it's virtually untraceable. Later that day, Luigi appeared in court for an arraignment. When police were escorting him into the hearing, Luigi is heard yelling, out of all of the items listed that Luigi supposedly had on his person at the time, he didn't reject any of these claims by the court, except the money and the purpose of the backpack. He said the money could have been planted and the backpack was simply waterproof. By that evening, he was officially charged with second-degree murder in connection to the death of Brian Thompson. Almost immediately after releasing Luigi's name, the public got to work finding out who exactly Luigi was and any social media presence that he had. This includes Spotify, WordPress, and of course, YouTube and Twitter. People quickly discovered a YouTube channel at Pep Mangione. This video was titled The Truth and included an 84-second countdown with a message that read, "If you see this, I'm already under arrest." Within that video, there was an additional 60-second timer, and near the end of the timer, a caption popped up which read, "Soon, December 11th." Then a second caption which read, "All is scheduled, be patient, bye for now." This sent the online community spiraling, but maybe not in the way that you would expect. Reportedly, his message saying all is scheduled meant that a second video was going to be released on December 11th at 6:45 p.m. And people were incredibly curious and excited to see what this second video would be, but shortly after the public discovered this channel, YouTube took it down. People were very upset with YouTube for removing the channel entirely, especially when people realized there was a sequence of code hidden in that video which translated to, "The truth will set me free." Since the beginning of this case, the cop's story has been all over the place. Initially, they claimed to have only found smudged prints from the crime scene and that Luigi's backpack turned up in Central Park. They also claimed he wasn't even on their radar before his arrest and that he was cool as a cucumber when his gun jammed. They also mentioned finding a silencer and that 3D printed ghost weapons are untraceable since they lack a ballistic fingerprint. But now they're changing their story. They're now saying they've matched Luigi's prints to some found near, not at, the crime scene. They're also claiming he was wearing the same outfit when arrested, and he was apparently a nervous wreck at McDonald's when cops asked if he had been to New York. It isn't unlike law enforcement or the mainstream media to completely shift the narrative on a story when it isn't exactly going to plan. Within one day of his arrest, they claim to have supposedly matched the casings found at the crime scene to the weapon found on him in Altoona. But again, this is supposed to be an untraceable 3D printed weapon. So how can something invisible be matched? And that silencer they cataloged earlier, yeah, that's mysteriously vanished. One theory that almost immediately popped up came from the backpack found by police in Central Park. This backpack apparently contained 2 items: Monopoly money and a Tommy Hilfiger jacket. Online investigators and online sleuths wasted no time digging into the significance of these 2 items, connecting all of these dots and drawing similarities to the Monopoly game and to the committed crimes in New York City. Starting with the Tommy Hilfiger jacket, specifically the TH logo. The logo itself is an international maritime flag message for pilot on board, which people theorized could potentially mean that this killer was not acting alone. The term pilot on board means that a specialized harbor pilot is currently on a ship assisting the captain in navigating through a very specific and often complex or dangerous waterway. While a pilot advises and guides the ship, ultimately, the captain remains in command. There's that theory now coupled with the monopoly money theory. This theory heavily relies on Luigi, or whoever the shooter is, having a very personal vendetta against the American healthcare system, specifically United Healthcare. United Healthcare and pretty much every insurance company has had their fair share of scandals for a lot of sketchy reasons, and we will get to that in a minute. But for the sake of the game, let's look at some of the similarities between the facts of this case and the game of Monopoly. Everyone knows that the game of Monopoly is never played alone, which lends to the theory that maybe Luigi didn't do all of this orchestrating by himself. The very definition of Monopoly is the domination of a market by a single entity, and the game's objective is to get rich by making everyone else poor. On the OG Monopoly board, the free parking spot was called Central Park Free, which is interesting since the shooter escaped freely through Central Park. Altoona, Pennsylvania, where Luigi was arrested, is the home of John Heap, who had a key role in developing the Monopoly game in the early 1900s. That same Monopoly board game that's been ruining family game nights since 1904. Altoona is home to the Pennsylvania Railroad and is also known as the City of Railroads. And of course, Pennsylvania Railroad is located on the Monopoly board. Another interesting connection comes from Luigi being arrested at a McDonald's, because back in the day, McDonald's ran a campaign for this big Monopoly game. They would put these various game pieces on their fries or their drinks, and if you found the right one, you could win $1 million. Unfortunately, one of their executives was busted because he completely rigged the game and hand-delivered those $1 million winning tickets to his friends and family. So McDonald's is really the ultimate symbol of a rigged Monopoly game. But if Luigi is planting all of these Monopoly clues for us, surely he has a get out of jail free card. Another interesting thing I found through my research is that during the World War, the British Secret Service actually contacted the manufacturer of the Monopoly game, because the company could also print on silk for these Monopoly sets, and that allowed them to do things like hide escape maps, money, compasses, and different files within the game, and then deliver those games to prisoners of war, which was a really creative way to deliver inside and sensitive information. Another potential clue comes from Luigi's profile photo, where he is seen looking really happy with a Happy Meal. This Monopoly theory does raise a couple blinding questions. If this entire event was orchestrated as a way to rebel against giant corporations, capitalism, and corporate greed, why would Luigi choose to go to Starbucks before the crime and then go to McDonald's after? And if Luigi was truly on the run, why would he only go 286 miles and risk being recognized, unless, of course, he actually wanted to be caught? This theory revolves around a very specific set of numbers, 286. Looking at the cover photo from Luigi's Twitter account, we see 3 photos: a Breloom Pokemon, an x-ray of Luigi's back following surgery, and a random hiking photo. Breloom is this cute little mushroom Pokemon, but his Pokedex number just so happens to be the number 286. One of Breloom's special powers is forcefully shooting seeds at the intended target, which ultimately drains the life out of them. 286 is also the number of posts that Luigi just so happened to have on his Twitter feed. Proverbs 28:6 reads, "Better to be poor and walk in integrity than rich and crooked in one's ways." 286 also happens to be an insurance denial code, but there are a lot of insurance denial codes. There were 286 miles separating the crime scene from the McDonald's where Luigi was arrested. Code 286 is also a United States criminal code that charges individuals, organizations, and companies that purposely and intentionally defraud the U.S. government. Earlier this year, in a 286-page ruling, a judge found that Google had violated the Sherman Act, which prohibits monopolies, by buying its way onto browsers and devices and making it nearly impossible to avoid its search engine. One of the fake IDs found on Luigi lists an address of 128 Sherman Place, which people have connected to this same Sherman Act, which again makes it illegal to monopolize business within the United States. The hate and disdain for the American healthcare system is nothing brand new. One of the main reasons so much anger has been directed at United Healthcare is that this company is very well known for denying a third of all healthcare claims. United Healthcare uses an AI model for claim denials called NH-Predict. It analyzes patient data to predict the amount of care a patient should require. However, this AI model is accused of having a 90% error rate. It's denying life-saving treatment and care for millions of people. Lawsuits filed against United Healthcare allege that the company uses the algorithm to prematurely and in bad faith halt payments for healthcare services. United Healthcare has devastated millions of individuals and families, and they're leaving families in complete financial ruin. And it all comes from this unquenchable thirst for power, control, money, and corporate greed. Many people believe that Mangione's actions could result in a massive cultural shift, which we've already seen happen to some degree. Following the incident in New York, the public has been very loud in support of Luigi, not for killing another human being, but for being a representation of our collective exhaustion for capitalism, unified disgust for the government, and witnessing the blatant apathy of the top 1% towards we the people. There have also been reports of protests and school walkouts in support of Luigi and against the public healthcare industry. All over the country, graffiti has popped up demonstrating the same. And in New York, residents posted pictures of CEOs from other corporations and a giant X over Brian Thompson's face. This isn't a lack of humanity or a lack of empathy. This is the generation that had to normalize going to kindergarten with a bulletproof backpack. They've been denied life-saving care and medications and are left to drown in overwhelming debt. While some people use a gun to kill, other people simply weaponize the system to do it for them. So why would they shed a single tear over a top executive who profited off of their family members dying? This generation is witnessing the rich finally be more scared than the school children. So did Luigi actually do this? And if he did do it, was he acting alone? Or was he hand-selected to be the face of a much bigger movement? If there's one thing we know about organized change, it's that the face of the movement really matters. We all know who Rosa Parks is, but did you know that she was hand-selected to be the face of the civil rights movement? However, it was actually a pregnant teenager named Claudette Colvin who first refused to give up her seat and move to the back of the bus. Claudette even admitted she wouldn't have been the right person to be the face of this movement. According to her, she had darker skin, she was pregnant, and she was an unwed teenager. But Rosa Parks presented as a much better fit for the desired outcome of change in this country. If there was a movement for class change happening right now, Luigi Mangione is really perfect for this role. He presents to most people as a white man. He's extremely intelligent and graduated from an Ivy League school. He comes from a very affluent family. He's young, he's fit, he's conventionally attractive. He has no documented history of mental illnesses and no prior arrests. He's the perfect model of what we're told we need to follow in order to achieve the American dream. He fits the exact type of person that becomes the head of a company and becomes the CEO. He defines the template for success. What could they say to discredit him? The theory I tend to lean towards is not so much a theory as it is a collection of pattern recognition, data, and the super close proximity to a lot of powerful people in high places with a shit ton of money doesn't hurt anything either. One thing that fans of true crime know, and they know very well, is that the correct answer is usually the most obvious one. So I asked myself a few basic questions about the death of United Healthcare's CEO, which ultimately led me to some really interesting information. So let me ask you the same questions. Who has ties to United Healthcare and Brian Thompson? Who would be likely to benefit from Brian's death? Who would be at risk if Brian were alive? And how do any of them connect to Luigi Mangione? I wasn't expecting those few simple questions to lead me to the doorstep of a New York City police commissioner, a former Speaker of the House, and some not-so-dead members of United Healthcare's C-suite. Months before his murder, Brian Thompson and two other United Healthcare Group executives were named in a 20-page complaint filed by the Hollywood Firefighters Pension Fund. This pension fund manages more than $300 million in assets for current and retired firefighters in Hollywood, Florida. Recently, United Healthcare announced that they were going to purchase Change Healthcare as part of a $13 billion deal. However, the Department of Justice moved to block that transaction because of privacy concerns. United promised that when the transaction moved forward, they would install firewalls to prevent any type of data sharing. They didn't. Stephen Hemsley and Brian Thompson dumped their own personal stock and ultimately netted $102 million in a 4-month period. This lawsuit claims that the executives of United Healthcare were very aware of the DOJ antitrust investigation, but chose not to disclose this information to the investors or to the public, which ultimately wiped out $27 billion in shareholder value. The lawsuit also carried potential consequences, and if Thompson were alive and found guilty, he could have faced penalties up to $5 million and up to a 20-year prison sentence. Andrew Whitty, who was named in this lawsuit with Brian Thompson, is also a CEO for United Healthcare. His insane pay ratio is 352 to 1. That essentially means his salary is 352 times more than the median salary of all employees. He was also the highest paid CEO among health insurance companies in 2023. Brian Thompson didn't even land in the top 10 highest paid CEOs. Since Brian Thompson's death, Andrew Whitty has completely doubled down on the insurance company's bad practices, saying United Healthcare will continue to guard against the pressures that exist for unsafe or unnecessary care to be delivered in a way that makes the whole system too complex and ultimately unsustainable. Those are the words of someone who's completely out of touch and out of empathy. Stephen Hemsley is chair of the board and former CEO for United Healthcare. He's also a co-defendant in the firemen pensions lawsuit. In 2010, Hemsley was the highest paid CEO in the entire country, bringing home a whopping $101 million, which in today's money, with massive inflation, is more than $144 million. This lawsuit alleges that the executives collectively sold $120 million worth of shares in 4 short months. 102 million of those shares were Hemsley's. Only 15 million of those were Brian Thompson's. So again, we should be asking ourselves why someone would choose to target Brian Thompson instead of someone more powerful and wealthy like Hemsley. I'm not an expert in finances or politics, but I do know that greed and corruption are very bipartisan. It turns out that Nicholas Mangione, Luigi's grandpa, has direct ties to the political and very well-connected Pelosi family. The Mangiones immigrated to the United States and launched a business which would eventually expand into multiple country clubs, nursing homes, and even a radio station. The Mangiones are very well known in Baltimore as a prominent Italian-American family, just like the Pelosi's. Back in 1995, Nancy Pelosi's late brother and former Baltimore mayor spoke very fondly of Nicholas Mangione. He described Nick as being a family man first and foremost, and even said that was Nick's calling card. I think it's interesting that these families are connected, and they've been connected for a long time, but what does that have to do with United Healthcare? When United Healthcare purchased Change Healthcare and promised to install those firewalls to protect data, but ultimately didn't, it was such a massive breach in security that the American Hospital Association deemed it the most significant and consequential incident of its kind against the U.S. healthcare system in history. On that very same day, Nancy Pelosi and her husband Paul conveniently purchased $4 million worth of shares in a company called Palo Alto Networks. This company just so happens to specialize in cybersecurity. In response to the attack, Change Healthcare, which now fell under United Healthcare, hired 2 cybersecurity firms to investigate. Palo Alto Networks happened to be one of those 2 firms. And the Pelosi's very timely decision to buy into this company netted them $11.9 million. Another prime example of this happening is with Visa. Paul Pelosi conveniently unloaded 2,000 Visa shares just a few months before the DOJ sued them in an antitrust lawsuit. They alleged that Visa maintains an illegal monopoly over the U.S. debit card market. The Pelosi's made headlines again when they profited $4 million on a bet that Paul Pelosi had made on a company called Nvidia. Once again, Paul Pelosi placed those bets just weeks before Congress happened to vote on providing massive subsidies to that industry. It's not illegal for the spouses of lawmakers to deal with stocks and trades, but it is illegal for family members or members of Congress to profit from inside information. Nancy has denied all of these allegations through her representative, and you're welcome to believe that, since our government has never been known to lie directly to our faces. Jessica Tisch is the current New York City Police Commissioner. She's also the daughter of a billionaire. After creating a human version of Wallace and Gromit, he became CEO of Lowe's Corporation. This is not Lowe's Home Improvement. Lowe's Corporation is an American conglomerate headquartered in New York City. The company's majority stakeholdings include C&A Financial Corporation, Boardwalk Pipeline Partners, Lowe's Hotels, and Altium Packaging. And it's no surprise that the employees of Lowe's Corporation are covered by United Healthcare. James Tisch isn't just the CEO of Lowe's Corporation. He also holds a seat in the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. He's also an active board member at General Electric, Mount Sinai Hospital, and the New York Public Library. He also contributed to a $50 million investment fund for a news website called The Messenger. James's dad and Jessica's grandpa Lawrence was a billionaire businessman and investor. He was also a CEO at CBS Television Network. To make it perfectly clear, if you have enough power, wealth, and influence, you can buy the media. Since his arrest, Luigi has hired 2 separate attorneys to represent him, Thomas Dickey in Pennsylvania and Karen Friedman Agnifilo in New York. Karen is a 25-year veteran of the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, and she also happens to be married to the man currently representing Sean Diddy Combs. That's right, this couple is simultaneously representing the Diddler and the Riddler. Having attorneys like this in his corner is really smart on Luigi's part, because the prosecution is continuing to pile on charges just to see what sticks. When I began filming this today, Luigi only had 1 charge against him for second-degree murder. But just a few minutes ago, I was notified that he's now been indicted by a grand jury on first-degree murder charges and terrorism. The Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, and of course, Jessica Tisch, announced that they're charging Mangione with a total of 11 charges, one of which is charged as killing as an act of terrorism. Now that I know Luigi has been indicted by a grand jury, I have to ask if we the people are going to indict our own federal government for promoting the crime of this lucrative business that kills innocent people every single day while they call it policy. Obviously, all of these new charges are meant to make an example out of Mangione, but it also sends the crystal clear message that billionaires are now a protected class, and the CEOs that profit by terrorizing the American people are worth multiple lives, but ours aren't even worth 1. What we're witnessing right now is the exact scenario that George Orwell wrote about in Animal Farm when he said that all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. According to the district attorney,
this was a frightening, well-planned, targeted murder.
I'm sure this is frightening for a certain class of people. I suggest they take a drive to their local elementary school and ask a second grader what the active shooter protocol is, since they had to learn that before they learned their ABCs. And this isn't about left or right or politics at all. This really comes down to class consciousness and the massive unbalance we're seeing between social and working classes. Becoming a vigilante through violence is never the answer. power. But we are seeing how these structures of power are becoming increasingly uncomfortable as we the people question a crumbling system designed to keep us compliant. And mass compliance comes a lot easier through disease and poverty. Meanwhile, the top 1% smoke cigars in a C-suite, bankrolling off their artificial conscience. Let me know your thoughts and theories below, and if you enjoy watching the downfall of corrupt leaders like I do, click the video in the top left corner to see who's next.